What's up everybody, I'm Adam, you're watching the Model Aviator channel. In this quick look fun flight episode, we'll be checking out an airplane that's been around for quite some time. This is the FMS 2000mm Beaver version 2, and as popular as this airplane is, I'd never flown one until FMS sent us this one. As it turns out, there are a couple things that aren't ideal, but overall, it's as good as people say it is. The Beaver is definitely a large foam model, almost a 79-inch wingspan, and comes in just under 8.5 pounds with a 6S 5000 milliamp pack. It's going to be right at home at an organized flying club, but there are probably parks and schoolyards that are large enough to accommodate this when there's nobody around. Just want to make sure that you're following the laws governing flying model planes wherever you live. FMS sells this two ways, as a plug-and-play or a plug-and-play with floats. We got the one without floats because we wanted to depict a land-based de Havilland Beaver. All plug-and-play means is that all the electronics are pre-installed for you, motor, ESC, and servos. You need only to source a receiver and install that yourself. Whatever protocol you want to use is fine as long as it's a full range receiver. It is a 5-channel airplane out of the box. You have elevator, rudder with a steerable tail wheel, ailerons, really nice slotted flaps, of course throttle control. There is an extra signal wire coming off the ESC that you can plug into an extra slot in your receiver for thrust reverse if you'd like, and of course if you're going to use some sort of gyro stabilization. If it isn't something like AS or X Plus that's self-contained in the receiver itself, you may need an extra slot so that you can flip through the modes on whatever gyro you choose. This version of the Beaver has several upgrades over the original. Starting from the ground up, the main wheels have ball bearings so they roll free and easy. If you get the version that has the floats and you're utilizing the floats have a servo plug that makes hooking those up much easier than the original version. And of course the OG version had a pretty wild paint job. This one has a different paint scheme that I prefer quite a bit more. And the OG had stickers for windows. This one actually has clear windows and some interior detail, which is nice, and that is what sets it apart and makes it the version 2. The mold is well done. You've got a lot of panel lines, some rivet detail, as well as proper corrugation on the control surfaces, including the bottom-only corrugation on the flaps and the ailerons, which is true to scale to a full-scale de Havilland Beaver. You've got plastic reinforcement in strategic places, mainly where things mount, like the wing mounts, the gear mounts, and the mounts for both the vertical and the horizontal, as well as a lot of plastic scale details. You've got a pitot tube, a plastic cowling, you've got a dummy radial antennas, you've got a fake strobe on top that's plastic. You also have functioning LEDs on the wing tips, wing landing lights, as well as a strobe on the tail. This is actually an optional glider tow hitch. If you want to tow up a 2-meter glider, you could do that. When it comes to the hinges, the elevator and rudder are foam hinges. Both the ailerons and flaps are scale hung underneath plastic pin hinges like a full-scale, I mean a full-scale Beaver doesn't have plastic hinges, but they look like the ones on the model. The linkages are concealed for the flaps and the ailerons, which is very clean, very nice. They are exposed for the elevator and the rudder, and you have a Z-bend on the servo arm end and ball links on the surface end. And then, of course, you've got a latch for the removable top hatch. There's plenty of room in that battery bay for the recommended 6S 4000 pack. We went as big as a 6S 5000, and you could go bigger than that if you wanted to, although for balance purposes and flyability, I don't recommend it. When it comes to assembly, the manual does a great job of taking you through the steps of assembly, and there's not really a lot to it. It's a pretty typical foam model assembly. Most of it is tools. You need a little bit of glue for the pitot tube and some of the optional plastic parts if you want to use those. The only issue that I really ran into was a common issue that I think everybody runs into, and that is that when you go to put the wings on, there are holes in the mounts on the fuselage, and then of course there are holes in the tabs of the wings, and there's a brass threaded fitting at the bottom of that. That's what holds the wing in place through the mount on top of the fuse. Well, those don't line up perfectly, and it's really difficult to get your bolt in there. You have to kind of wrench it around and go in at an angle, and it kind of boogers things up. What we did is took a 1/8 inch drill bit. I measured very carefully and marked the drill bit with Sharpie so that I knew how far to go. I just drilled the top of those tabs on the wings, being very careful that I didn't get all the way down to the brass fitting. You don't want to mess that up. And that basically just created a funnel which makes guiding the screw into the wing holes when you go to put the wing on very easy. It makes field assembly and disassembly a piece of cake. They go in very easy, and my clips on the foldable struts at the bottom, the holes were lined up perfectly. I've seen some people complain that those weren't lined up. Mine were. They went right in pretty easy. The other thing that I've heard people talk about is that sometimes the motor is not all the way tight, so I took everything off and checked that, and the motor was fine. I definitely recommend that you balance that prop. It took a lot of weight on one end to get that prop balanced. It was way out, so be sure and check that. When it comes to the optional plastic parts that you might glue into place, that would consist of the multiple wing fences as well as the auxiliary fins for the horizontal stabilizer. We told you we wanted to depict a land-based beaver, and most full-scale beavers that fly off the land and always have are in the configuration that you see here. They don't have any of that stuff on there. Every now and then you'll see a land-based beaver that has the wing fences, but it's one long fence that separates the ailerons and the flaps. When it comes to the multiple wing fences and the auxiliary fins for the horizontal, that's popular with float pilots. The auxiliary fins give you more yaw stability to make up for the extra surface area of the floats, and the multiple wing fences, especially outboard where the ailerons are, aid when using something that every beaver was manufactured with, and that is drop ailerons. Drop ailerons actually come down, both of them, when you drop the flaps, and they turn into flaperons, gives you more flap area, more stole performance. They come in handy with float pilots when they're trying to get in and out of a tight waterway. Keeps it a lot less sketchy for them. But you just typically don't see that stuff on a land-based beaver unless that beaver was on floats and it's now on normal conventional landing gear. Sometimes they'll just leave that on. And to be fair, a lot of people change that by the season. So to depict our land-based beaver and leave all that stuff off, pretty easy to omit these, but we had to do something about the big ugly gap between the horizontal and the elevator. If we didn't use the fin, it wasn't going to look good, so we put the fin in place but didn't glue it. I traced around it, cut it, sanded it to fit, and we just put it into place. So now I don't have fins, but I also don't have a big ugly gap. When it comes to setup, the manual has all of the needed information within to get you started. You can set the airplane up the way it suggests, fly it, and then make adjustments to your liking from there. When it comes to the airplane being a plug and play, obviously you have to install your receiver of choice. We fly Spectrum, so we installed the Spectrum AR631 Plus receiver. That's a 6-channel AS3X Plus stabilization, Safe Select capable receiver. We're not utilizing Safe Select. We are, however, using AS3X Plus stabilization. We did put that on a switch, flew the airplane without it first, got it tuned that way, and then tuned the AS3X Plus, so we can tell you how the airplane flies both with and without it. Now when it comes to our personal setup, we're going to throw a few windows to my right at you where you can take a look at some information, pause that if you'd like to see it more in detail, and duplicate that if you would like, and then we'll tell you the rest. We're going to start out with our AS3X Plus stabilization settings. They are right here if you'd like to duplicate those. Next up is going to be our flap menu from our transmitter. You can duplicate that if you'd like. And then next is going to be our servo travel menu from our transmitter, and that's going to vary from transmitter type to transmitter type and plane to plane a little bit, but it should be somewhere close to that. That will for sure get you started. Now, when it comes to everything else, we're at 100% rates on all control surfaces. We are at 10% expo on elevator and aileron and 30% expo on the rudder. And the only thing left is balance. We flew this airplane on everything from 6S 3200 to 6S 5000. Spectrum packs flew it on an SMC 4400 as well. I started with the heavier packs and went down, and I can tell you with the 5000 and the 4400, the airplane felt nose heavy to me, and it wouldn't slow down anywhere near as well as I thought it should, being the type of airplane that it is. The 4000 and the 3600 are the sweet spot. We measured our CG utilizing the 3600. That's my favorite pack. That is the best combination of good flight time and optimum balance. And our balance with this battery all the way back in the battery tray is 79 millimeters from the leading edge of the wing at the root. That's a few millimeters behind, I think 4 or 5 millimeters behind what is suggested as the rearmost balance. Any forward of where we've got it there, to me the airplane flies nose heavy. At our setting with that battery, the airplane's light enough and the balance is neutral enough that it flies really good in slow flight, but it's not so neutral that when you roll it inverted you don't need down elevator to maintain inverted flight. You still do. So the airplane feels normal everywhere, just slows down way better, and considering what it is, that is an important part to us. So that is our setup. When it comes to flight characteristics, we're going to go into some more specific details with some narration during the fun flight demo. But overall, this airplane flies every bit as good as everybody says that it does. It is a very large foamy, just on the cusp of giant scale, and it flies like it. Very smooth, doesn't have the fastest roll rate, but given the nature of the way the ailerons are designed and the scale nature of those, that is to be expected. But it will roll fast enough. You can add some rudder and increase that roll rate. Still a very aerobatic, very capable airplane if you want to fly it that way. I will say a couple of things. I would love to see when companies do the automatic electronic connections, if they would do it in a more advanced wing setting. It's very convenient, but it forces you into the most simplistic wing setting in your transmitter. One aileron, one flap. Everything is essentially wide together, given those automatic connections. I'd like to see maybe a one flap, two aileron wing configuration and have them just tell you to do that. You don't have to do anything with it. You can just fly the airplane normal, but it gives people like me the option to program the drop ailerons and have flaperons like a full-scale Beaver if I choose to. To make that happen now, I've got to take everything apart, do away with that convenient feature, and make it harder for myself to be able to program that. And I just don't think that that is a stretch to make those plugs that way. I'd like to see not only FMS, but any other company that makes airplanes with the quick connect for the electronic connections. If there is an advanced option to the wing, give me that. If people don't want to use it, they don't have to, but if I do, I'd like to be able to have both the convenience and the advanced wing setup if I want. The other thing is, when it comes to the wheels, I ran into the same issues that a lot of people have ran into. I've heard that the axles on this airplane are weak, and they are. They do need to be replaced. I have sourced some Dubro axles that I'm going to utilize, and I have to say, the wheels are fine. Their ball bearing wheels are a little bit hard, but the airplane can be easily landed well and not bounced on a hard surface if you just do your part. I'm kind of a fan of the wheels personally, but the axles bent on me on one side on a still relatively good landing. It certainly wasn't my best, but it is nothing that would bend the axle on anything else. So I just will say that. I do have to end on a positive note though. It is a brilliant flying airplane. When it comes to the skill level, it could easily be a trainer if somebody wanted to use it as such, but I think it's better suited as a second airplane, especially given some of the things you need to do to kind of get it sorted and make it its best version of itself. That's not something somebody new is going to know how to do. I still think that the FMS Ranger series of airplanes are the best trainers on their website. and this would be a great second airplane after somebody masters something like that. When it comes to the price point, yes, it isn't perfect. There are some things you have to sort, but it is an iconic airplane in full scale. This is a very good scale foam example of that airplane. Flies brilliantly. You can make it look almost exactly like the genuine article in the air if you want, or you can push it and it's a very aerobatic, very fun airplane for somebody that wants to fly it that way. In my mind, it is well worth the price point given today's market, and it's worth doing the work that you need to do to make it perfect, because it is going to be a really good flying airplane and one of the best planes in your collection if you do. So we're going to put some links in the description where if you'd like to check the current price out and add one of these to your hangar, you can. If you purchase it through those links, it helps support our channel. When you do that, Heidi and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. This thing is a winner, and we're going to show you that with the Fun Flight demo next. Enjoy that. We'll see you in the next one. Here we're going to do a clean stall test, and as you can see, it just mushes forward, doesn't really drop a wing. Now I'm going to turn around, drop the flaps, and you'll notice it does the same exact thing.
Wow, that's pretty docile.
Here I wanted to discuss the tail wheel. The combination of the suspension on the tail wheel axle, if you will, and the lack of grip on the tail wheel makes it skip on a smooth surface. That's a good landing. You can see it kind of skipped out on me. Pretty easy to catch because it was going so slow. Here's a bad landing, and look at how unruly it gets. So we changed the tail wheel out to this Dubro tail wheel. Has a larger contact patch and much more grip. The main wheels are actually pretty quiet. Most of the noise you're hearing is that tail wheel. I'm going to transition into slow flight. I'll engage full flaps. You'll see a little bobble here when I do that. That is because I have the speed that the flaps and elevator compensation engage set too fast at 1 second. I think 2.5 seconds will make that transition much smoother. And as you can see, it is very stable in slow flight, and you can get this airplane slow when the balance and the pack are in the right place. And at full throttle, this thing will move. The roll rate is a little slower than I'm used to, but it is fully aerobatic and it can do quite a bit if the pilot's willing to push it. Obviously, models this size have no problem with grass runways, even rough ones. Was even able to get a lazy, smooth pop top out of it. That's the nice thing about larger models. They do everything smoother than smaller ones. The Beaver reminds me a little bit of a Cub in that it likes coordinated turns and lots of use of rudder. But if you cross the controls up like I am here for this super flat turn, it remains rock steady and stable. And the same thing goes for the knife edge performance. Yeah, there's no way I'd end it on that landing. We're going to take this thing around and do it right. This is a brilliant flying airplane. We enjoy it. If you'd like to add one to your hangar, we think you will too. That's it for us. Take care of yourselves. Happy flying. We'll see you next week with something cool with wings.